Let's talk transfers now then, shall we, Gab? Starting off with Manchester United. We know they're interested in Jadon Sancho. Reports over the weekend, though, suggesting that they need to get rid of Paul Pogba first.
Yeah, I don't really buy that. I don't see those two things as related. Why they should be related. Basically, if you look at Manchester United's numbers over the last few years, if you look at certainly last season, if you look at their spending, if you look at the way that they tried to work on their wage bill, I don't see why all of a sudden it becomes an imperative to sell Pogba so that you can bring in Jadon Sancho. Bear in mind, we don't quite know what the transfer market's going to look like, what the numbers are going to look like, how much money it's going to effectively take to bring in Jadon Sancho. I think if you're United, there are certain things you want to do, but I think they're going to be just as effective. If you can find a home for Alexis Sanchez and Chris Smalling, for example, both of whom are on loan, both of whose loans expire. Roma would like to keep Smalling, Inter with Alexis a little bit less so. But for example, those two guys together, you look at their wages and, that's substantially more, for example, than what Paul Pogba earns. Plus you'll get some money back, presumably, for Smalling. So, you put those things together, I think it's a good tale, and I think maybe there's some people at United who wouldn't mind selling Pogba if they get a big enough fee. But the reality is the two things can't be contingent on each other. And I'm also not sure that Juventus are in a position where they can just come up with 100 million in cash and say, oh, give us Paul Pogba.
Solskjaer's quote, obviously, about holes and a-holes made a lot of headlines over the last few days. People suggesting it was Lukaku, Alexis Sanchez and Paul Pogba. Are they proactively looking to get rid of the Frenchman, Gab?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe he was referring to Paul Pogba. And again, look, you've heard from me, you've heard from Jules, we've said it time and again. I think the people who hate Pogba the most are, a couple ex-pros in the media, frankly. We've really not had any indication. And look, maybe they're all lying to us, but when you speak to people at United, when you speak to players at United, when you speak to former players at United, nobody goes and has a go at Paul Pogba and blames Pogba for being that term you used before, that Solskjaer used before. So I don't quite know where this is coming from. Now, obviously, those are three big earners. Lukaku, they managed to shift. Alexis, I think, is going to be very difficult. And by the way, we're talking big numbers. Alexis makes nearly twice as much as Paul Pogba does. Surely that has to impact United's wage bill more than Pogba. But I think just even looking at numbers, if you look at the number of central midfielders United have, even if they do shift Pogba, they're going to have to bring somebody in, and it's going to necessarily be somebody, I think, who can start.
Away from United, a transfer rumour that's been continuing, hasn't it? Over the last couple of months, Lautaro Martinez to move from Inter Milan to Barcelona. Where are we on this, Gab?
This is exceedingly simple, okay? And I think, people in Barcelona seem to be tying themselves up in knots over this. The man has a release clause. If you pay that release clause, he goes. Can you get him for less than that release clause? Yes, you can. If Lautaro goes to Inter and says, look, I want to leave, and goes and throws a strop if they don't allow him to leave, and then you can see if you can negotiate, put some sort of package together that makes sense for Inter. The problem with the packages that have been mentioned in the Spanish media or the Catalan media, it's always been, all right, what old, highly paid players are there at this club that Barcelona no longer want? Okay, Arturo Vidal and, Rakitic, let's package you guys up and send you to Inter. Well, Inter's not going to take away your rubbish for you. Or certainly they shouldn't, I think. So I think they're going to have to either throw players into the mix that Inter actually want. There's been mentions of Semedo's, mentions of Artur. I think those guys are a little more realistic. Or somehow come up with the cash, possibly by selling somebody else, if you can do that.
Meanwhile, if Martinez goes, is Cavani being lined up to come in and lead the line with Lukaku?
There's a lot of reports in Italy saying that they're very close to a deal. They have a deal in principle for Cavani. Personally, I don't think this is a great move simply because of his age and his wages. But hey, that's just me. On the other hand, the reality is Inter last season, they had 3 forwards. They had Lautaro, they had Lukaku, and they had Alexis Sanchez. Alexis Sanchez's loan is expiring. They're going to need another striker in any way, regardless, come what may. So I don't necessarily think that this is in any way linked to Lautaro. You can view it as some insurance if you like, but I think they're talking to him because they know that they're going to need 3, if not 4 strikers next season. They also have the kid Esposito, of course, but he's still a teenager. So I think one way or another, they were always going to look to pick up a veteran center forward.
Icardi, of course, still owned by Inter Milan. With PSG at the moment, they have the option to buy him for 70 million at the end of the season. An option maybe they're starting to doubt whether or not they would take up. Suggestions maybe that Chelsea are having a look, Gab.
Look, you can take everything that we've said about Inter and put it all on hold because everything is pending finding a buyer for Mauro Icardi. If PSG decide not to take him up and he comes back the other way, then I think, yeah, it would be a serious issue for them because then they wouldn't have the liquidity to do other things. So it's understandable if he's been linked to other clubs. He does have a tremendous scoring rate. I personally don't think Chelsea would be a good match for them really at all, simply because of Icardi's style, because of his work rate. Because, you know, you look at, he's so different from what Tammy Abraham and Olivier Giroud bring to the table. He really is a supply-dependent striker, very good one, but he's somebody who, you know, you need to create chances for. And that's very different from somebody like Abraham who's so busy. So it wouldn't make too much sense for me, but I'm not surprised that Inter or whatever intermediaries are out there are trying to drum up interest around Mauro Icardi because if Paris Saint-Germain don't keep him around, it's a bit of a disaster for Inter.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.